We were trying to connect with as diverse a group of stakeholders as we could reach. And in those conversations, I was asking people how they felt about the just transition, and what people told us, what you told us, was pretty consistent. We said, look, we understand the problems, we know most of the solutions, we're bored with being consulted, and we're really frustrated about the slow pace of delivery. Our sector is super siloed. There's loads of people doing really fantastic stuff out there, delivering the transition, but they're just not well connected to each other.
I think one of the most important things in delivering the just transition is collaboration. It's not going to be just one thing. It's not going to be just finance or just policy or just health benefits. It's going to be making sure that there's a real interconnection between all of those aspects.
Just transition means that in transitioning to a zero carbon economy, people and communities are not negatively impacted by that.
We're facing an existential crisis, and that's really scary, and the position that leaves a lot of people in, myself included, is paralysis, and you don't do anything because you can't, it's too overwhelming. So I think holding on to that hope is really, really important, and the risk is losing that.
Fast-paced, day-to-day, million Teams notifications, million emails. Very few of us have the luxury of being able to sit and think strategically, what is the future that we want?
The intensity of carbon in how we live and also what we build with has increased to a degree that is way beyond what anyone would perhaps recognise from not that long ago. The materials that are going into this, that is quite probably in terms of carbon reasonably heavy, but it's still with us. The carbon is now done. Knocking it down and building a lower operational carbon model, I don't think is the answer.
We are all generally aware that a move to a just transition has so many positive benefits, not just for us in the immediate term, but in the longer term for our children, our grandchildren, future generations. How do you raise that awareness to others?
A lot of people live in boxes and they don't want to look outside of it. That is the barrier. And also a lot of my friends who are now retired, they've got the money. Don't want to know anything else. They say, I've done my bit, I don't want to be involved anymore.
Also, we're in this huge epidemic of misinformation. So the minute we try and put out basic things on social media, they're hit back constantly with, don't believe in climate change, COVID was made up, fix the potholes instead.
I think you have to look at kind of positive examples of instances where there has been that behaviour change. So I suppose smoking cessation is probably a really good one and encapsulates lots of different elements. So you've got kind of higher taxation or cost on cigarettes. There's concern around one's health, and then there's technology, so vapes coming in. So that's a whole kind of system there working together to reduce smoking, and for all intents and purposes it's worked, and it's worked really well. That's in my opinion, the model that we should be using for just transition.
It's often said that the first photographs of planet Earth taken from the moon, the so-called Earthrise photo, that's what kick-started the environmental movement in the late 60s and 70s. But in many ways, I find this image much more compelling. It was taken by the Cassini spacecraft as it was passing Jupiter. It turned around and took this photograph of planet Earth, and you can see that we're just this kind of pale blue dot isolated in space. And I think it's clear from this that no one is coming to our rescue. Whatever happens is up to us. And currently there are a lot of powerful people who'd like you to believe that technology has all the answers. I don't believe that's the case. I think technology has some of the answers, but we actually need broader cultural change. Our built environment is to a large extent a reflection of the way we see ourselves as humans. So if we take the view promoted by neoliberal economics that humans are basically selfish, savage individuals in a zero-sum game of survival of the fittest, it leads to urban forms like this, very isolated buildings with very low levels of social cohesion. If, on the other hand, we took a more enlightened view of human nature, then I think it would lead to examples like the 15-minute city, modelling them on ecosystems.
Building resilient places that support well-being, that support the natural environment, that encourage community cohesion, that support local economies. I think these are all really important things that we need to be centering in our placemaking.
The talk we heard today about regenerational stuff, that's very inspiring, it's amazing, it's a thing that we all want. When you actually put that up to leadership or to the decision makers, that isn't necessarily seen like as a desirable thing, because the desirable thing's like, okay, well, politically what will win me an election?
Governments are rolling back on their commitments. They say they're going to do stuff and then they don't do it, or they'll make an excuse for not doing it. And as we try to move towards a just transition, there's going to be a real risk of the public just not trusting what they're being told.
Sometimes we talk in terms that people can't see how it applies to whether it's their little organisations or themselves.
With all of this brilliant data science we have, how do we embed that in tools that are accessible and easy to use?
Most important thing for me in the just transition is how we work with the public, the people of Scotland. That's where the real crux of the issue is. Big believer in social sustainability, big believer in the best building we can have, or the best community we can have is the one that people love and use. But we need to be able to talk to people in a manner that everybody understands, that has respect and has trust.
Consultation without inspiration is hopeless. And I think there are very few people that would choose to have a degenerative legacy. I hope that by practicing more unifying ways of communicating with each other, we might be able to restore that faith in the possibility of a positive future.
I think we need to look at our current state, where we are, our future state, where we want to or need to be, and then that informs the action state. How are we going to get there? But it needs to be including everybody in that. So a just transition is inclusive, it's accessible, and we need to hear different voices. If we can map the landscape we're trying to cross, then by doing that, we can create more visibility of that landscape and who the stakeholders and actors are within that ecosystem in Scotland here in the built environment, so that we can better connect for collaboration and for coordinated action.
We're seeing impacts today that climate scientists thought we would see in the 2080s. I would say as a scientist that guidance and regulations are currently lagging between 12 and 20 years behind the latest science. We basically have three choices: mitigation, adaptation and suffering. We are going to do some of each. The question is, what is the mix going to be? Adaptation was always felt to be the one that we'd only do if we were too stupid to cut carbon emissions. Well, we've been talking about cutting carbon emissions since the Rio summit, and emissions continue to rise year on year. So we need to adapt. It is so much cheaper to design in resilience and adaptation now than to literally have to mop up people's lives and infrastructure and rebuild again and again. An awful lot of natural systems are getting really close to tipping points. If we warm the planet to the point where these natural stores of carbon are released, we will initiate a spiral of warming that we wouldn't be able to stop. Collapse of major agricultural regions around the world, or collapse of insect populations, really kind of existential stuff. I always used to joke that climate science was the one area where the scientists were more scared than the Daily Mail, but the top centre headline is from the Daily Mail, so we appear to have gone in the media straight from it's not a problem, it's not real, to it's too late to do anything. And I really want us to move back from that view. Every fraction of warming that we can avoid will save lives, and it will save millions. We're seeing real intensity of rainfall, perhaps way beyond the design standards of our buildings and our drainage systems.
Floodwater, nasty, smelly, dirty stuff that ruins everything that you hold dear. We've seen a huge increase in multiple simultaneous flood events across Scotland's geography.
The area is actually one of the most deprived in Scotland, so the least likely to be able to cope with this suffering.
You know, we've been hit with 8 storms in 10 weeks. People were opening their doors and just getting to the full height of the door. I think seeing the relevancy of climate change and how it impacts them is maybe something that a lot of people in that area of Brecon didn't see until very recently. 200-300 homes in the town, bridges are gone, roads are gone, a community's gone. A change is something that's going to be needed. I think something to buy into would be good.
If we're raising attention to the fact that flood risk makes this street, devalued, if that street then groups together and takes action, what we should be seeing is a financial system that has inbuilt rewards for that investment, because at the moment there is no reward for the investment when it comes to selling that asset.
We need our public services to collaborate in effective, inclusive adaptation action. I think collaboration was one of those key active words throughout the plan.
The Scottish Government to me always feels like it's some guy called Bob with a list of things about the length of War and Peace on his arm that he's got to try and cover. Do you feel like you're getting enough capacity internally to tackle this kind of remit?
Do we have some of the fundamentals there? Yes, we've got a good statutory evidence base. We've got some of the structures to talk to people and make connections across. Do we have the structures and architecture to plan at the appropriate level, maybe get people to collaborate across a catchment? Maybe we don't yet.
I mean, I've worked in local government for years. I remember having elected members coming to me and saying, why should I put money into future adaptation for a future potential problem when I haven't got crisis care for kids that need removing from an abusive situation today? It's the worst possible time to be trying to think about this issue because we are all so constrained.
We've just launched our Climate Ready Edinburgh plan, which is our adaptation plan. So we'd love you to help us in the built environment side of things, formulate some actions that we can put in.
When we had the pandemic, we moved heaven and earth because of the immediacy of what we had to deal with. Our adaptability was incredible. Because of that reaction, we were able to find a vaccine quicker. That concentration of focus of effort. How quickly should we be moving to action? Making mistakes and learning as we go. Learn by doing.
By 2026, the EU, 27 and UK construction sectors use up their fair share of the carbon budget for 1.5 degrees. So within 1,000 days, all carbon emitted by our construction sector is essentially colonisation afresh. It is taking from the rest of the world that we have already stolen from. When we've talked about sustainability up to this point, what we've really meant quite quietly is damage control. So it's about going towards that regenerative. So how can the activities that we do in the built environment do ecological and social good? Scotland's greatest untapped resource is not North Sea oil, it's the transformational capacity of our homes. We have all this infrastructure that is not working for us, why not reimagine it and do it very differently?
Do we need to have a VAT on just virgin new materials coming into the system? Then once they're in the system, they're already there.
Well, it's embodied carbon
Yeah.
tax you need there, which is talked about a lot.
At the moment, we are building toxic pollution boxes, polybag wrapped, with arsenic in the timber we use, with cyanide in the insulation we use. The people who died in Grenfell died from cyanide poisoning, not the flames.
Our office is working on a really kind of great project in Ulster using straw bale construction. So straw bale cassette panels that can be fully demounted. The suppliers that we can get for that type of product are based in Europe, but it's materials that can exist in the Scottish-Irish context.
If architects are specifying materials, then that's what it will be built by, right?
They would love to specify these materials, but often it's very cost driven by the clients. It's the clients that need to be educated.
For me, what's really important in the just transition, moving away from an oil-based economy, is a move back to more traditional natural materials, including plant-based materials, which is what our company does. So India Nature makes natural fibre insulation from materials like traditional hemp and jute and flax, that capture carbon and they're good for people's health and good for buildings. We manufacture on scale, so we have a mill in Jedburgh on the Scottish borders. It's a local crop and it's manufactured locally as well. And I was working with people in fuel poverty and saying, this is terrible, how are people living in cold, damp homes in the 21st century, how can we build better? And I learned about all these benefits of natural materials. And I did a retrofit of my own house, but I had to get wood fibre insulation that was manufactured in a factory in Poland. What we saw there was a market gap. Why is nobody doing this on scale in the UK? We wanted to make the largest possible impacts we could on people's health and the climate. The only way to do that was to do it on an industrial scale. I think most of you are aware of the massive challenges in the construction industry. It's taking about half of natural resources. A lot of that is non-renewable. About half of global carbon emissions, and about half of landfill around the world. Massive, terrible impacts. So the solution that we have with our products is we're using fast-growing renewable resources. We can grow our crops within a year, and they capture carbon very, very quickly. There's lots of benefits to natural fibre insulation. They're good for people's health because there's no toxins in them.
With solid timber, we're locking up lots of carbon for the life of a building and beyond if we reuse the materials. We're seeing it all around the world. We're seeing it in Australia, United States, Canada, France, Netherlands, all sorts of places, except here. And everywhere is opening factories at a rate of knots to manufacture from the local resources, except here. And all over the states, they're changing regulations state by state to encourage greater use of timber. They've had a Mass Timber Act to encourage more use of timber in tall buildings. They have universities changing their curricula. It's happening really at speed.
We've got big sawmilling groups in Scotland. I mean, we have a big industry, but they produce pallets and potato boxes and fence posts. You know, getting them to do something that requires longer term investment, that requires a different kind of attitude to manufacturing.
We import more than 80% of our construction materials in timber, which is just crazy, and post-Brexit even crazier. In Scotland, we've got the biggest glue lamin LVL building in Britain, and if you haven't been up to Craigellachie to see the Macallan distillery, you really should, because it's the most, in many ways, the most advanced building technologically in this country. These guys in Sweden have been experimenting with LVL to make very thick LVL, curved sections. Instead of, you know, when we put wind turrets here, wind turbines, we see enormously long steel tubes getting transported around the country with great difficulty. This is modular. You put them together in a factory, you bring it all to site, you can get multiples of these in a truck. Renewable energy systems, Scottish company, ordered 200 of these from Sweden. We could be making them.
Circular economy is an economy where there is no such thing as waste. It is materials which we value for multiple uses throughout their lifetime before we reintroduce them back into the natural environment. What it isn't is the current model, which is linear, where we take, make and dispose. In Scotland, we use about 8.2, 8.4 tonnes of materials a year per person. That's 3 times more than the world can sustain. Circular economy, if done right, can create jobs, create green jobs here in Scotland and reduce carbon.
For 200 years, industrial activity has been based on degenerative design. We take Earth's materials, make them into stuff we want, use it for a while, and then toss it away. Take, make, use, lose. It's a one-way system that runs counter to the living world, and it's devouring the sources of its own sustenance. Economic theory has told us not to worry, that more growth is needed so that nations can afford to clean things up. But at the global scale, that's simply not true. And the effects are destroying Earth's life support systems on which we all fundamentally depend. We can't wait for growth to clean things up because it won't.
We can't change VAT levels on kind of retrofit. That's in the gift of the UK government, and it's something that, of course, a lot of people push for, and I think that would be the ideal change.
Rather than trying to create new things, how do we make better use of what we have?
Glasgow has an abundance of old industrial spaces that have been sitting empty for years. Our motivation has been to sort of demonstrate that these old buildings that used to be the driver of economic growth through the Industrial Revolution that created a huge amount of waste and pollution that's led to where we are now with the climate imperative, how we can retrofit these buildings to create spaces for the new green economies of the future. We're making them fit for the next 100 years, but also keeping that heritage in the city that I think is so important for the stories we tell about change and what change can be.
There are nearly 44,000 6-month plus long-term empty homes in Scotland. That's a terrifying number. That doesn't even count all the homes, all the empty flats above our shops in the high street. That's 100,000 possibly empty homes and flats. And that's against 20,000 a year new build, the Diddy boxes that we seem to accept as being the one way forward. I know housing associations that would love to interfit, retrofit. It's cheaper to do that in good existing stock, but the financial modelling they get forces them to knock them down because they can get more money for build back better, it's called. The greenest home, the eco home, is the one already built.
Kenetech, we are at the forefront of delivering ultra low carbon products. We have our first product, the K-Brick, which is made almost entirely from recycled construction and demolition waste and is not fired like a traditional clay brick and does not use virgin cement. When you're comparing it to traditional clay-fired bricks, for instance, we're under 5% of the embodied carbon.
Is there a perception that stuff is not fit for purpose and that's why we can't reuse it?
We're not living in a world that's free of risk. Like, in fact, the alternative is far more risky to far more people.
One of the things we can do is implement the polluter pays principle, where the suppliers are responsible for whatever happens to their products at the end of their life.
When I started out in my journey in working for all these companies, climate action was not even thought about. And when I think back about some of the decisions that I was involved in, they weren't maybe the right decisions in hindsight looking back, given the climate emergency that we're in today. I need to try and help reverse some of those probably poor decision making.
Fife College, one of our main electrical suppliers of lighting, we sat with them and said, look, you're bringing a ton of cardboard, paper and plastic with your product. We need to find a better way of doing that. We digitise the pallet in a way that when it comes on site, someone's got the digital device, the phone, scan it, and it tells them exactly where that has to be delivered to. And the pallet eliminated wood, plastic, cardboard, and even the shrink wrap. It's about stewardship and taking responsibility for our actions while protecting and advancing our industry. We all turned up here today because we want to make a difference. When trust and collaboration are held in equal measure, real transformation will be delivered.
Our buildings, our kit, our money are all secondary to our people, and we need people to be at the heart of our process of change, or that process will fail.
The economy is changing, the nature of work is changing, the jobs that we're going to need are changing too.
How can we redesign the system that it works to address the climate emergency, having that better foresighting about the jobs that are coming forward, equity and equality, that's what a just transition needs to be about. How do we build in measures that make sure that we don't have that unjust transition that Glasgow faced in the 80s? Equip and skill up our young people and to upskill and reskill people at all stages through their careers.
In workplaces right now, it is people aged 45 to 65 that are being left behind, and they come with an enormous skill set, and it's basically harnessing that.
We need to be increasing the knowledge of our existing skilled tradespeople as well.
Some of the challenges we've got to get the skills right for this just transition is we're trying to fit it into too long an established model which sits very fixed on now outmoded role profiles.
Even where colleges are providing courses on low carbon technologies, so say like training on a heat map, a new entrant into the industry then has to find an apprenticeship. And that apprenticeship comes from a gas installer.
I trained to be an assessor so I could get that qualification through in earth building.
Currently there's probably about 50 of us in Scotland, so it's a very small number, and this is where we cannot deliver an SVQ in earth because it's too small. Yeah. But in order to make a just transition with green construction and not use cement, we need 500, we need 5,000.
Yeah, I think it's a really big problem, but
the
apprenticeship system is not set up for expanding at that rate.
No, and it's not flexible, because what I could do is go in with the brickies and say, right, brickies, let's use unfired bricks and earth mortars. All the skills are the same.
If you have a very small workforce and you need a very big workforce, but the training of the new workforce is dependent on an employment contract with those very small number that are existing, you can't grow quickly.
I think sustainability in school needs to also transition. It feels just like an add-on to design, but it should really be implemented into design from a very early stage.
So we decided, let's create a community environment. We went to the local authority, took on an asset transfer, disused community building. We then transferred this into a construction training centre. We're a referral system for the police, from schools. Within the construction centre, we literally kept it simple and set up all sector trade stations. Electrics, plumbing, joinery. Linked with that, we'll put them through their qualifications. So when you've got an attainment gap, we bridge that attainment gap because we're an SQ accredited centre. We are working with 600 pupils per year. We have 300 individuals out of school curriculum activity time. One of the young kids, his name is Murdo. The police wondered where Murdo went when he joined Community Trade Hub. We Murdo tried joinery, loved it. This is me. All that bravado, all that other stuff disappears. Poof, gone, away, disappeared. Where is he now? Family, house, car, passed his apprenticeship. We've had hundreds of kids, thousands of kids that we've worked with that have moved into positive destinations because of that work. They're talking about buildings and place, and I respect that buildings need looked after. But if the skill set's gone, how can we look after buildings?
I went to a tiny school in Drimmen, which isn't that far from here. I remember it was called Eco Schools, and you got this green flag if you were an eco school. And I honestly do think that shaped my future. I've worked in circular economy for about 6 years.
Essentially, what we're trying to do at Heriot Watt is teach climate advocacy, to give students a sense that they have power to affect this, and to start to give them the tools to actually enact that. It makes you realise, yeah, I've settled for this, but at least I'm training up people who won't.
Today's conversation has really brought up the importance of cultural transformation, the courage to change, to let go of familiarity, the status quo. We hold values as materialistic, monetary values. We don't hold cultural, community, environmental values, or even health and well-being as a value. And that's why this is not moving fast enough.
Scotland at the moment is sadly experiencing a worsening in life expectancy and a healthy life expectancy. The net zero and low carbon future has the potential to improve health and simultaneously reduce inequality.
Last year, 521 people died in Scotland just because they were in a cold house. You extend that to Britain, over 4,000. We bring in the actual effects of mould and damp. You're seeing long-term respiratory conditions. You're seeing issues affecting your eyesight. Mould is contributing to children being born with learning difficulties and with stunted growth.
Fuel poverty is shameful, and it's shameful in the 5th richest country in the world. We're vilified for drug deaths in this country, but we're not talking about the deaths, needless deaths of people because they live in cold homes and they can't afford to heat their homes.
We put on a mental health session at the end of last year because we had one of our surveyors came in and said that one of his colleagues committed suicide out of the blue, and it obviously really shook him. We put that on, it was really well attended, but I spoke to a lot of the older men because it's predominantly older men in the surveying profession. and they were like, oh, I don't need this. I don't need to talk about my feelings. I'm fine, I'm doing fine. It's a much, much wider problem that just really isn't spoken about enough.
Do you think construction's significantly worse than other professions? I suspect it might well be. I mean, I know people are bailing out. They kind of say, oh, you've got to be tough to come into this industry. Well, is this an opportunity to make it? You haven't got to flog your mental health and turn yourself into some sort of Neanderthal to work in the industry to get ahead.
When I lived in London, when the Gen Z demographic came into the workforce, they just said, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not breaking my back staying hours later for no additional pay. And I thought that was such a breath of fresh air.
The construction industry is deadly. It kills over 50 construction workers in the UK every year. 2 construction workers take their lives every single week in construction. And that's not to mention workplace-related diseases.
We're not here to just work and die. We need to work and live.
We've been conditioned to think that that's normal, but it's not. Gender equality is normal. You know, patriarchy, gender inequality is weird. The workforce percentage itself isn't the problem, it's a symptom of the problem, which is the anti-human culture within construction. The most common cause of death for men under 30 is death by suicide, and for men in construction it's 3 times worse. The lack of gender diversity and the suicide of young men are symptoms of patriarchal culture. And across all these events then, we've got 84 women and 85 men, so thank God we're normal.
So there's hardly any women out there working in the industry. And one of the reasons behind that is because of the male chauvinism and the harassment. Over the pandemic, I was dealing with hundreds of women in the offices who were being harassed and bullied by their male colleagues.
Where we are with women in property and construction at the moment is not as good as we could be. I'd say that things are getting better and we are creating a more inclusive environment. However, we're not quite there yet, and there's a lot more that we can do.
What we'll see is just 1% of skilled tradespeople in construction are women.
I'm a young female in the construction, so this topic is quite relevant to me. So kind of how do I personally stay in the industry, what would have to change or maybe improve for that to happen? And I think, kind of conversations on mental health and well-being is at the key of that, because if we don't feel great ourselves, we can't deliver good environment for other people.
There's a gender filter which prevents women from progressing, and that's why they drop out and kind of move on to other professions.
Diverse workforces, diverse companies show better and greater gains in terms of innovation, and we need innovation if we're going to achieve our net zero targets. And the more women that we have employed, the better the outcomes for the economy. Of course, we need to support people into choosing good careers and to finding their pathways. You can't be that you can't see, but it's not only on the women to make this transition equitable and fair and gender inclusive.
Having a flexible working arrangement that might allow more agency, more opportunities for people of different backgrounds as well, for instance women, to move into the construction industry.
How can we move from a conversation about cost to one about value? In all the conversations we've had with stakeholders, with you, money has consistently been raised as a key issue for delivering the just transition. Investment is essential to make the just transition real across every community and sector in Scotland. If investment provision is to be left to the market alone, we will see an unjust transition.
We need to fully invest in all sorts of preventative spend. So you're then meeting fewer challenges later on, and then you have more money to invest in all of the other things: healthier, warmer homes, good education, social structures which help to support people's caring needs.
Always quite interested in what they're doing in other countries in terms of funding and supporting, like in Germany, France, and generally it is taxes, it's carbon taxes. Ireland have got set up a sort of retrofit agency, they're slightly more public sector led model, but again that's funded by the public sector and it is funded through taxes.
Surely there's a long-term advantage or benefit, to taxing now, improving the housing stock, to then better health later.
All well and good to have people better able to afford their heating. But if the building that they're heating isn't fit for purpose, they are still wasting their money. That heat is still escaping out of single pane windows or improperly insulated walls and ceilings. A big part of that is retrofitting, making sure that the tenements which people live in right now are actually livable. It's a lot cheaper to upcycle a building than it is to knock it down and build a new one.
I've been campaigning for 20 years for VAT to be levelled across home building. I knew a senior member of the volume house building industry, and he said, well, if you did that, we would just change ourselves into volume house repairers. If we just change the way that money flows, industry will follow us. They will follow the money. We don't have to do everything ourselves.
Improving buildings is absolutely key to the just transition. For a starter, because it creates more jobs. For another kind of societal reason, that it reduces the burden on our infrastructure on the national grid. It'll also bring equity to our communities, making sure that everyone can afford their homes and they can live in healthy, clean homes.
There's a report done by a group called GemSave, showing that to properly fund efforts to mitigate fuel poverty in England and Wales up to the legal requirement cost about 18 billion. 18.1 billion is the amount projected by the New Economics Forum that the British government is giving to oil and gas extractors in tax relief just between 2023 and 2026. The money is absolutely there. It's not about whether we can afford this or not. It's about whether we want to.
We are the Development Bank for Scotland. We exist to invest commercially in those things that are going to make Scotland better for everyone to live in. To achieve a just transition to net zero by 2045. Investing in places and regeneration to reduce inequalities, improve opportunities and outcomes for people and communities. And harnessing innovation to enable our people to thrive, so it's investing in things that will make healthier, more resilient, more productive sort of populations. So Indie Nature, who I understand have already had a call out this morning, so we invested £8.5 million in them.
There is a funding gap in Scotland particularly, but there's oodles of capital. We can map capital flows just now. It would be very simple to be able to see, actually, this capital should be getting here, that's its intention, but it's not getting there.
Is the existing economic system fine? Do we just need to make some tweaks? Is that all we need to do?
I don't think the premise of capitalism is evil. It's being allowed to operate in a way that separates the most amount of wealth for the fewest amount of people.
Certainly in the next 100, 200 years you're going to get away from this capitalist ideal. It's not... It
has 200 years? We've got until 2045.
I just don't think it's practical. There are too many vested interests that will stop it from happening.
I feel a lot of times one of the stumbling blocks in terms of focused delivery plans is outdated contractual models. I think it's how do we go beyond to create meaningful partnerships that go beyond this level of there's a pound sign at the end of it, and adding in, I guess, value-based procurement versus just bottom line procurement practices.
The government puts some policies in place that benefit this horrible consumer society of building rubbish that doesn't last. That's absolutely on purpose. The general public end up paying for that and the profit still gets left. So I don't understand why there's no consequences for that industry who have basically abused the lack of policy knowingly that they built rubbish.
Should money and power be pushed down to communities to spend money and make decisions on a local basis? The chances are that if communities are responsible for that, then economic change will come much, much quicker than waiting for a top-down approach.
Decarbonisation of heat within the Scottish Government, the kind of key primary pathway we see for that is the electrification of heat. Scandinavia would be the normal sort of place you'd point to, is actually large-scale deployment of both heat pumps but also district heating. And I think about, say, what they're doing in Stockholm at the moment, where they're trying to move to their district heating network being powered by at least 10% from the waste heat from data centres. Studies have shown about 20% of Scotland will be suitable for big district heating networks, powered from everything from waste heat from manufacturing, centres from the river, like they already are at River Clyde, taking the heat out of the Clyde, which always slightly blows my mind, and using that to heat swimming pools, leisure centre, colleges, homes, hopefully a hospital in future. So this year I have a capital budget of £320 million to support the transition to both energy efficiency retrofit and clean heating. About 150 million of that supports those who need it most through our fuel poverty schemes, so that's hugely valuable.
We're currently committed to allocating at least £1.8 billion through the Scottish Government over the course of this parliamentary session. And out of all the UK nations, Scotland has the most generous funding package in terms of grants and loans available to households. There is no path to net zero without an ambitious approach to getting away from fossil fuel and polluting heating. If we're going to do it though, we have to recognise the incredible impact that high energy bills have had on people.
These are some of the challenges that I think we face for our property transition to net zero. Funding, time, there's the cost of electricity versus gas, which I'm always reminded of by our engineering team. Electricity being about 4 times the cost of gas at the moment. The capacity of the construction market has been highlighted as an issue in a number of forums.
Individual property, one at a time, simply isn't efficient. Whereas if you're doing it on a community or multiple street, multiple house, whatever it is basis, you can bring those costs down. It needs to be about community engagement, it needs to be about their involvement, maybe even to a certain degree a level of co-design. There is an element in there of being able to take these communities on that journey.
There's not a model for energy efficiency to turn the capitalist head to think, we're going to invest wholesale in that, whereas heat networks you think, right, going to get a long-term 40-year payback, I can go with that.
One of my just fears, and I hope someone can allay me of this, is that the government is going to the energy industries and asking them to help decarbonise buildings. But the energy industries don't actually know anything about buildings. We do.
What you end up with is energy companies who are told if you don't insulate X amount of houses or reduce carbon, you will get a hefty fine. So they go out there into this Wild West and they're paying companies, people that are going into these houses to do these energy assessments are not properly trained. They get a very, very basic bit of paper that says they're authorised to do it after doing an online training course. No, they've not got a building background.
So the way funding is delivered for people trying to improve their home is it's measure by measure. You can get a bit of money for floor insulation, a bit of money for wall insulation. And what we really need is a whole house approach. We don't, at the moment, look at the system holistically, and so we're not making best use of those funds. If we've got to get to zero emissions by 2045, we need a plan, a detailed plan of how we're going to get there.
For me, there is such a lot going on in this space. There's such a lot of policies. There's such a lot of action plans.
Would we be better actually in having more realistic policy, or at least prioritising incrementally what are the first stages we should do, what are the second, so it actually becomes achievable? Because at the moment there's this utopian dream up there. Everything's retrofit to a certain, and we haven't got the money at the moment.
Our take is that there isn't enough projects to put money into. What I think success for us would look like is that we find some of these models that are like those scaled area-based schemes. We come in, we prove that it works, and then other investors will go, it's okay.
We have more money in the world than we've ever had at any other time in human history. We also happen to have the technology to facilitate a just transition and a move away from fossil fuels. But putting those two things together seems to be at the crux of effective finance.
We have bond and equity markets quite capable of providing enough finance, but they're not doing so.
That's right.
Okay. And because we're not asking them in the right way, or because they're messing up?
That's a complicated question. Yeah, so if capital markets, however you want to frame them, finance, is about people putting money in and that money eventually coming back to them, the question is how long and how much? And there are some really interesting projects looking to crack this nut. So looking at ways of non-exploitative finance, community finance, that would facilitate sort of a place-based, scale-based transition.
Government is getting in the way.
No, we've just heard that the money won't come into this stuff without government intervention.
Out of all the days you've done so far, definitely people seem to be most passionate and verging on arguments. I think that's good.
I often feel frustrated and anger in my role, and to some extent, even within government, we to some extent powerless, because this is such a big shift and such a big change, and I know we can't do this on our own. Whilst on the face value we hold a lot of levers, we hold very few, and we have very limited resource. I really enjoy coming to these events and working with the likes of Sean and Gemma and things, because actually I find collectively we suddenly seem so much bigger and stronger and have so many more ideas. We also shouldn't forget the really, really good work we do and we see on the ground today and that we fund within the Scottish Government. And actually that's what keeps me going sometimes when it's tough, is going out to speak to the people who have had an intervention by Warmworks in their house. They've had a fantastic experience and their house is warmer, and it's saving, you know, all those kind of knock-on benefits that brings.
What I find optimism in is that we see people coming out of investment banking or the financial sector saying, I used to do this and I don't want to do this anymore. What I would like to do is to find a different way of doing it in a way that works for communities in a just transition. In the last 9 months, last 2 years, there's been a lot of really fast work on this. And so perhaps we're approaching what is looking like closer to be a pathway. I'm not going to say solution, but.
These conversations were born out of COP26, when I was one of 10 CEDA members present as official observers and participating in other side activities. And there, you know, we saw how Scotland's story is only one small chapter in the global debate.
Thanks to our colleagues from Denmark, from the Danish Energy Agency, who have made the journey to be here to share their experiences and their knowledge of the transition in a country with a population and a climate not wildly different from Scotland's.
I think a very important part of the Danish success is the dialogue between the political level, the regulator implementing level, and then the society and the businesses. So that businesses, they know kind of what regulation and what funds to expect for the next 10 years. And a lot of the governments that we have had in power, they are somewhat agreeing on the green agenda. So that makes for a very, you can say, clear path. So you, as a business, you actually dare to invest in green solutions.
In 2010, we started implementing this low energy class system in the Danish building code. The LCA Byg tool was developed back in 2015. Now the tool has all of the necessary features in it to comply with our Danish building code. And it's greatly used across the also educational system and in the construction companies to use, because it's free and really simple to use.
Scottish Net Zero Public Sector Building Standard target for embodied carbon is the same as your baseline one for all buildings, and that's only happening on, you know, number of buildings that's probably in the 2 digits. Someone in the room can tell me the exact number. So how do we go through that scale of moving from where we are to widespread commercial deployment, and should we be investing in public tools or should we be investing elsewhere?
For me, it's about taking tangible steps and having the right drivers in place to enable that transition. For example, the one I'd like to see Scotland move forward on a lot quicker is bringing embodied and whole life carbon assessment requirements into our building standards. This is something that's already happened in Denmark and Sweden and France, the Netherlands, Norway and a number of other places. It's going to be coming in across the EU for all buildings over 1,000 square metres from 2028 and for all buildings from 2030. That means we've got essentially somewhere between 4 and 6 years to figure out what the equivalent approach is going to be in Scotland. We already have things like the RICS professional statement, which tells us how to go about doing these assessments. But what we don't have is any real driver to do them.
One challenge we have here is in understanding and building the skills within the workforce that will be necessary to meet higher building regulations or to use different construction materials.
It's actually something that the Danish government is pushing forward. All these very much education engineers, and then young people, they want to work within these areas also. We need to be more self-sufficient, so we need the district heating, we need the wind turbines.
We've got active full
frontal, active lobbying in the opposite direction from the private sector. So a lot of people in our political system feel powerless when you talk to very senior people, the way our political system's financed.
We're going to need to take a really wide range of solutions, including the best of what Denmark has done and other approaches, but also looking to try and stimulate innovation for the solutions that weren't available.
There has to be room for mistakes and growth in that. And I think that's a very difficult thing to translate to the media and to bring people on that kind of journey.
We need to believe that we can make this happen and that we can make a business case out of it and that we can make a better world for the future to come.
There's an opportunity for Scotland to really highlight the things that they're doing good, much better, and to make people feel more proud about the things that have been delivered already.
I think Scotland's a very progressive, socially progressive country. I think that there's something, we've got 19 universities, we've got, you know, abundance of creativity and talent. We've invented so many things over the generations and gifted the world, you know, so many breakthroughs. I think there's something around, you know, almost having a second enlightenment. Can we have that in and from Scotland? In this little nation called Scotland, we punch above our weight in so many different ways, and I think that we have got a huge opportunity to actually make it happen.
We can, in the mirror, you know, as a construction built environment sector, we've found passion and vision, competence and knowledge, direction, insight, skill and love for our country, love for our fellow humans, love for nature, and love for the act of building a better future, which is, you know, the heart beating somewhere deep within our 10,000 year history of building. But we've also found fear, confusion, frustration, exhaustion, incompetence, disagreement, exclusion, and the debilitating love of wealth, status and power. And that's just me. You know, you've all had your own personal experiences.
In the Scottish Government, we believe it's critical that we take seriously our leadership role on climate, on net zero. You'll also be aware from the recent extremely stark warning from the UK Climate Change Committee that Scotland is not on track, certainly for the 2030 target. As a country, we have spent too long patting ourselves on the back for having ambitious targets and not enough time focused on the action that is necessary to meet those targets. We've now got a little over 20 years to go until the 2045 net zero ambition. And 2045 net zero is absolutely deliverable, but only if we reset and refocus now more on the accelerated action that is necessary in order to reach those targets.
What does government need from the sector?
People being clear to me what the barriers are and how they can be removed. Some of it is actually just about joining the dots.
We just need the training, and I would say we need the training from industry.
So in 2022, it was asked to write a report for Zero Waste Scotland with three of my colleagues on how Scotland could move towards introducing regulation of embodied carbon. I think it's now time for the Scottish Government to move forward with this agenda.
I work for a local government, and I think I went into a local government because I was very idealistic and I thought like I was going to be able to do good. While in practice on everyday basis, I find myself really with my hands really, really tied.
Actually, is it more about being the ability to give agency to others? I think if we continue down the track of like, I need to have more power in my role to do this, it just kind of siloises us further without us even knowing.
We're currently committed to the development of a just transition plan for the built environment and construction sector, and that will provide greater certainty for businesses and communities on what the journey means in practice.
It seems like, you know, whatever's the subject of all of those groups, we just keep on coming back to the same conclusion, that we need long-term framework and solutions.
If that roadmap is there, it will start to feel fair, and fairness is a basic principle in behaviour change.
We are going to need to continue to challenge UK colleagues, whether the current government or a successor, on some of the changes on aspects like regulation of the energy system itself and pricing, because there are decisions that are also long overdue at UK level.
I mean, it always gets back to a 5-year political cycle. If there's no long-term thinking, this is long-term investment.
The important thing is that the Scottish Government decides to lead this. It's like the idea that you set a vision and then everybody else is meant to just somehow organically sort of drift into doing that, is missing a really big gap. The Scottish Government has got us to a place where we all signed up to the idea, but it's failing to take the steps which say, this is the plan.
We need to start something. Everybody's talking about it and nobody's doing anything about it.
There is a global climate emergency. The evidence is irrefutable and the science is clear. How that translates into the decisions that need to be taken, that is where public deliberation can help. The good news is that concern about climate change is high in Scotland, and it's higher than the UK average. Deliberative approaches are anything from a formal citizens' jury, where people actually make a judgment on an issue, to a way of facilitating a conversation in your community. But you give them access to expertise. They've been used on climate change quite extensively, both at a local and at a national level. And people, the participants, take it extremely seriously. People who have never had any involvement in these kind of issues before are all in.
Instead of doom and gloom, we can be saying, well, actually, there's hundreds of billions of marketplace opportunities here in Scotland, in and from Scotland, for new business models and value propositions, products and services that transform where we live, work and play, a future-ready built environment.
We as an architecture practice have worked out our carbon footprint, so we know all our scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. It's quite an interesting exercise to go through, just to see where you as a business are actually causing emissions. And then obviously, being an architect, we can then start looking at our supply chains and deciding who we're going to work with. You know, are we only going to work with engineers, for example, who have emission levels below certain numbers, or that have so many women in their practices, or you know.
We're talking about it's great, meeting everyone who's on the same page is great. Other than that, just start doing stuff and changing things already. So I've set up loads of organisations. I've changed our governance structure. We all work on a flat pay scale. So it's just start doing as much as you can and don't let anyone tell you you can't.
Working for Network Rail Scotland, there's a lot of people with different priorities. So I think my journey is to be the person in the room talking about sustainability and to try and be in as many rooms as I can.
We deliberately place side by side these people that are in the decision-making rooms and the corridors of power right next to the people that are on the doorstep, delivering day to day, and just to try and see how much traction is there between those, where are the meeting points, and how far apart.
There's at least 4 actions that I've been able to take as a politician coming out of here. For example, just last week we had the renewal of our procurement for our doors and windows, and I was able to say, well, I'd like that procurement to include that their the fitment is NFIT standard.
I think it's really important that we do get community leaders and technical people in the same room as policy people. We all know the lobbying power of the energy companies and the oil and gas industry. So I'd like to see lots more of these events where there's actually interaction with government and policymakers.
I think the real challenge is going from focus on all the things that we currently need to fix to coalescing around a very specific set of solutions and then getting on and acting them. And a lot of the actions we need to take have remained the same for the last 10 years, but we haven't taken them. It's not necessarily just about bringing the community together, but coalescing around the actions that can be taken away and implementation of those. You can never judge the impact of something at the point at which it finishes. Most of the impact comes way after any seeds that have been sown in people's minds and any collaborations that stem from the conversations that we've had over these past 5 days.